Good morning. Welcome to Sherwood Demonstration Garden. We are here at Compost Central. Cindy's on your right, Dave's on your left. Take it away.
Okay, this is Compost Central in the Sherwood Demonstration Garden, and what we're doing is composting the plant material from all of the gardens except the orchard, roses, and marsh, and that's because of diseases, thorns, prickles. We don't want that in the compost. So we want to show you some of the bins that we have here. So the plant material that comes from the gardens are cut up small. So they go into these geo bins, and then the compost committee, we're about ready to form that. We put those in these 3-bin systems. So it first goes in here and then gets turned into here, and then this is the final product, which the gardens can use this, and it goes back into the gardens. Nice. And then this is a tumbler. It's a working tumbler. And we try to turn that as often as we can when somebody's out here. And then this is the leaf holding bin. And this is strictly leaves. And this is a carbon material or brown material that we're using to add to the nitrogen, the green leaves coming from the gardens. Anything else, Dave?
I think that's it. We're going to do a demo on how to build a batch of compost using that screen bin over there. But for the home composter, this isn't meant to intimidate people. It's like, why go to all this trouble just to make compost? Compost just happens. It happens in nature, and all composting is a natural process by which organic materials decompose. That doesn't sound too tough. People tend to make it more difficult than it is.
Can I show them this right now?
Absolutely.
So this is what I'm starting in my tumbler at home and all of my compost bins. This does not have any moisture in it yet. I'm filling up the tumbler. You can see it's not doing anything. So it starts off with this, and this is what I end up with. This is 5 weeks old compost.
Complete with worms.
Anybody can do this. Don't be afraid. We're going to show you how.
It's simple. It's simple. The end result is a humus-like product. That's humus, not hummus. You can eat hummus, you don't want to eat the humus. People think of composting as a stinky process. My compost doesn't stink. It shouldn't have to. Make it simple. If it does stink, there's something wrong with it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So what's in these piles? There's all sorts of microorganisms in here. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, springtails, mites, not mice, beetles, millipedes, sow bugs, and worms. If you do end up with mice and rats and dogs and things like that, then you've been adding things to your compost pile that you probably shouldn't. And we have a list of things that can go into there. The ABCs, your alphabet soup of compost materials, of what the recipes of what goes in your bins can be. So it's pretty simple. So why do we want to do composting? It saves money from having to go to the big box store or your garden centers and getting bagged compost. And we also know what we're putting in here will be getting out. When you get it from a box store, you don't know what you're getting. It could have pieces of metal, it could have glass shards in it, it could have chunks of plastic, which by law is all allowed in very minute areas. But what Cindy's got here is absolute garden gold. She knows what went into that process, and therefore it can be a controlled thing that goes into your garden.
And I know I've had to buy some bulk material. It's loaded with glass. You can't see it at first. It floats to the top. Glass, metal, plastic. And I know there's none of that in here. And you absolutely cannot buy this in the store.
Right. So notice that she's wearing gloves. If you're using the commercial stuff, you probably want to wear gloves because you don't know what you might be digging into. You could get cut.
Yes.
Compost improves fertility and health of the soil. You save water because it helps retain water in the soil. It also amends the soil if you've got heavy clays or heavy sand. The compost can help break that up and make it to where it's friendlier for the plants. Replaces the need for harsh chemicals. It's like a multivitamin for your soil. How long does it take to produce compost? People tend to get really, really upset if they spend $100 or so on a compost tumbler, and in 3 weeks they don't have a finished product. It takes longer than that. In nature, it can take up to a couple of years, but we have come up with systems that can accelerate the composting process into about 6 to 8 weeks.
This is 5 weeks.
Right. So
yeah, four to 6
2
weeks.
months to the outset, and a lot of it is just dependent on temperature. So it helps to have a little tool like a compost thermometer to monitor the temperature, particularly in large batches like this, where the center of it is going to heat up. Ideally, it heats up to about 140 degrees, and I'll explain why you do that. So that's typically how long it takes to produce. How long, or how do you know when your compost is ready to use? A couple of different ways. When you turn your pile, you add to it, you stick your thermometer in there and it doesn't heat up anymore. That's one indication. When you look inside the compost itself and you can't recognize any of the materials that you put in there to start with, that's another indication that it's ready to use, or that it's done. It's not going to decompose any further.
And that's why we sift it out.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be some carbon material that didn't break down.
Do you want to talk about sifting?
Well, there's the sifters over here, and it should smell earthy. And like Dave said, there should be no off smells at all. Earthy or no smell. So this is the 1/4-inch screen.
$45.
And a 1/2-inch screen. So a 1/2-inch screen is a good size for sifting out compost. We're actually using 1-inch screen over here, 1 and 1/2.
So the purpose of the different size screens is depending on your applications. If you're going to be using the compost to mix in with other materials to make seed starting mix, you would want to go with the smaller screen because you wouldn't want to have particles blocking seedlings as they're starting to come up. So smaller is sometimes better. If you're going to be using compost for a top dressing like a mulch, a larger screen or no screening at all is just fine with that.
And that feeds throughout the season. You put the bigger stuff around your fruit trees, ornamental trees, shrubs, perennial plants.
Methods of composting, we have in the big batch areas considered hot composting, where your temperatures are going to climb up, like I said, upwards to 140 degrees. If it gets higher than that, up to 158, that's going to kill your beneficial microbes. So you definitely want to monitor the temperatures of what's going on in there. And these do surprisingly heat up, even on cold days like today. It's 40 degrees out here. Cold method, also called passive, and we can show that in the second bin over there, is where you're continually adding materials to the compost bins, but it's not going to heat up like you would expect a large batch to do.
Let's see. Size. The size of your bin needs to be 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, or 1 cubic yard. And otherwise it's not going to heat up. These bins are 5 by 5 because of the amount that we're putting in there. We need a large area. And so that's the volume. And then there's aeration. We need to get some air worked in here. If we have pockets of no air, that's anaerobic conditions. You get bad bacteria. So we need oxygen worked in. Moisture. I didn't realize how important moisture was. This needs to be moist like a wrung out. So this is dry. This is just waiting to use. We don't want this moist. The particle size. The gardens are chopping these up about 3 inches. About the more surface area you have, the more the microbes can break it down faster. And then the C to N ratio, that's carbon to nitrogen. You don't have to get all scientific about it. So carbon is the browns, the nitrogen is green. And so it's about 1 bucket to 1 bucket. 1 bucket of greens to 1 bucket of browns. That's what we do. If you have too much manure and it smells like ammonia, you need to add more browns. It's that simple. So you don't have to have a background in science to do this. Don't be afraid to do it. You can be successful.
So how do we use compost? You use it as a soil amendment. You can incorporate the compost into the soil to fix issues like too much clay, too much sand. Compost can be used as a mulch, just to put down as a top dressing on the ground. Difference between compost and mulch, what we're standing on here is considered mulch. These are big chunks of wood that are going to take a long time to break down, but they work really well in pathways. So it works well for weed suppression and moisture retention. But this is not something you would want to incorporate into your soil because it would take forever to break down, actually robbing nitrogen from plants to break down woody pieces. So one difference between mulch and compost is compost can be incorporated in the soil, mulch should not, especially inorganic mulch like ground up pieces of tires and that sort of thing. It can also be used in potting mix, and we showed the screening process before where you would take finished compost and screen that out and incorporate that along with parts of sand and soil to create a potting mix for your getting started in the springtime. So things that we should see in the compost pile and things that we should not see in the compost pile. This list here shows a lot of what we can see, but things like diseased plants Cindy mentioned from the rose garden. Roses tend, at least here, to have some problems with diseases that you don't want to incorporate into because it will be passed on to other plants as you're using your compost. Those diseases may not get broken down by the temperatures that you're going to get inside these bins.
So black spot is an example of rose
Definitely.
disease.
Yep. Is there hazards to composting? Unfortunately, there is. And we're not wearing them today so that we can speak to you more clearly, but wearing a mask is really pretty important, not just for COVID concerns, but also for dust and bacteria. As these things break down, you're going to end up with airborne bacteria floating around that you can ingest into your lungs. Farmer's lung, aspergillosis, and Legionnaire's disease are some of the diseases that you can encounter with composting. Some troubleshooting issues. If you notice that you've got some bad odors, either a rotten smell or ammonia, it means that your pile may have gone anaerobic, which this is a very aerobic process. You may have too much moisture. You might want to turn it. You can, if this bin is too hard for you to turn, you can use this auger tool here to just kind of drill on down into the pile, pull it up, turn it, spread it around, get it moving, incorporate air back into that. It's important to have air into your composting process. And Cindy, I found your sponge. It was breaking down here over in this bin.
And show them this, Dave.
So this is just a simple piece of rebar that you pick up from any hardware store. I taped on a little bit of duct tape on the end, but this is a great tool for getting your frustrations out and also helps aerate the piles as you go. So air is really important. If you don't have air, you're going to end up with smells. Low compost temperature. If you're expecting in a batch pile that you're going to be seeing temperatures in excess of 100 to 140 degrees, but it's not happening, what's happening there? The pile may be too small, not the case here. Too little moisture? Definitely, we haven't put moisture in this pile yet. This is kind of a green holding bin. Too much moisture, too little air, lack of nitrogen. If the pile is dry throughout, not enough water. If the compost is damp and warm only in the middle, means the pile is too small. You might want to mix it, turn it, incorporate the sides back into the middle. That gives more of a uniform breakdown of the compost. If your pile is encouraging or attracting dogs, rodents, insects, then you may have some improper food scraps like meats and cheeses and fats and that sort of thing. Dogs are going to be drawn to that. And if your neighbors are complaining about your bins, come up with a prettier system to make your compost more appealing, not only to you, but to the neighbors.
And that's pretty too.
It is.
Well, I think it's all pretty.
It's something to get all excited about. First thing to consider when you're setting up compost is being close to a water source. So we have drug a hose all the way from a spigot over there. And like I mentioned, it's 40 degrees out here, and our water is just not flowing all that well. But you got to have a source of water in order to get your compost going. It's working a lot better now.
Oh, yes.
Got the camera person, sorry. The hazards of filming.
She was cold already.
Yeah, I bet she is. Hot versus cold, it's really up to the person doing the composting and whatever setup they have. Not everybody has the space or materials to come up with the batch composting. So that's why we'll show the bin over here where we can do what's called a dump and run kind of composting. Another thing that folks don't often think of is there can be some elements in a compost pile that you don't really want to put in there, such as here in the Sierra foothills we have manzanita. Manzanita leaves have chemicals that are drawn off from rain and moisture that get into the soil and chemically inhibit germination of other plants. So you would definitely not want to incorporate something like that into where you're intending to use your compost in growing vegetables or other ornamentals. However, on the other hand, if you want to suppress weed growth and in a pathway, then it's perfectly acceptable. So know what your intended use is for your materials before you incorporate it. So manzanita is just one example. To compost things like blackberries. Blackberries have a lot of thorns. They will break down, but the thorns are going to take a while to break down also. So again, wear gloves if you're intending on doing that. We'd recommend not doing that. But if that's the only green material that you have, then go for it. Poison oak, poison ivy, poison sumac can be composted, but the urushiol oil, which is dominant in those plants, which is what people are allergic to, does not break down in the composting process and will transfer. So as you handle the compost, even if those materials have broken down to the eye, the oils are still persistent in there, and you will end up getting a breakout if you're allergic to that oil. We talked about the difference between compost and mulch. And I think that's...
And this is, can I bring this over? This is called leaf mold, and there's no moisture in it. This is just leaves. This is leaves from last year, and it was about 3/4 high. That takes a lot of material. And I just want to stress that this is so valuable. You can't buy leaf mold in the store or the nurseries. It takes a long time to break down. This is a year old. And this is great to put around your trees and your shrubs because they use the nutrients as it breaks down.
Cindy,
so
we have
instead of burning and hauling the leaves off, collect it.
We have one question. Do you need to cover compost during the winter?
Good question. That's
Perfect.
one of my answers.
Perfect.
I cover. We have a nice cover for this tumbler because we have the moisture how we want it. We don't need any moisture from the sky. So yes, we cover this. We do not worry about the leaves, the leaf holding bin, so we don't cover that.
If the concern was from rain, if the concern is about temperatures, composting will slow down, but it will still continue to take place. So if temperature is the concern, that's really not a big deal. It just won't happen as quickly with ambient air lower than in the summertime. But if you leave a cover off, say that compost tumbler, moisture is going to get in. It's going to turn into an anaerobic mess and just stop everything, and it's going to stink really bad. So also with these bins, you can see we have cardboard stacked to the side. We use a sort of a cover to deflect like rain and snow and that sort of thing, so that again we don't end up with an anaerobic situation. So it's got to helping to keep it covered. It helps the end product.
And that cover also keeps it from getting too hot and dried out, because we do have worms. I put some worms in here and they've multiplied. And then the other thing is we're going to put, maybe by next year, we'll have a cover on top of the 3-bin system, so we won't need the cardboard.
Good question, thank you.
Yes.
We ready to build?
Are we ready to build?
Absolutely.
Yes. So we've got a few things here besides the plant material. I collect coffee grounds from 2 coffee joints. So this is a nitrogen, even though it's brown, black, it's hot. So where do you want to be?
How about if we start with some of your wonderful horse manure?
Okay. You want to take the pitchfork and just put some holes in there for drainage?
Pitchfork into where?
And the ground.
Bottom?
Usually we put big stalks,
Sticks?
like sunflower, tomato.
Tree branches?
So we just don't want the water sitting there at the bottom.
Right, so it'll drain.
So this is horse manure. Here, do you want this? I got to put my mask on. That I collect from a couple places. I'm a collector. So I've got a source for alpaca beans. That's alpaca manure. Horse manure. Chicken manure, which I call chicken coop litter.
I was going to actually use this as a measure.
Here, I'll use this. Now the leaves, you really want to punch them down. So I'll just get another lid going.
So the idea of packing this into the bucket, we started with a fairly full bucket of horse manure, which is a green, and then we wanted to incorporate an equally full bucket of brown so that we keep that ratio going. So it's equal volume, not equal weight, and that's important. People get confused about that. So greens have in the source tend to be heavier than the browns, so you don't want to have equal weights. You want equal volumes.
Yeah.
Now get the water. Okay, look out, camera person. So just a little squirt. You don't have to douse the whole thing to where it's running off. You got more leaves.
Well, just when you need it. Just coffee
Coffee
ground.
grounds, you ready for that?
Yeah.
This is coffee grounds are a great source of green material, even though it's brown, high in nitrogen. Did you glue this in here?
I actually, did I sift? This is office paper, and I do not use plastic window envelopes or credit cards. This is pure paper, no glossy ads. Uh-oh, there's my mask. So you can see we don't have to be specific about how much is going in. Thank you.
You bet.
Now you don't have to do this, but I'm going to add just a handful of finished compost. It's loaded. Billions and billions of microbes are in here. Billions and billions.
So what's key about that is some places will sell you compost starter. And what Cindy just did was she inoculated this pile with finished compost, which has the beneficial microbes that you want to have in your pile. They will go on and seed the rest of this pile to create more microbes to get this pile going and heating up in no time at all.
And a lot of that activator is simply hot stuff like manure, blood meal, that sort of thing. So the consistency that you're looking for is a wrung out sponge. So you should just get a couple little drops, a few little drops there. Whoops. I'm
We're
composting
having the
this
dropsies
sponge.
today, Cindy.
Please. Now this is to show you some things that you might not think about composting. This is packing material from a nursery that I got stuff from. Wonderful. Cardboard egg carton. Toilet paper roll. Or paper towel roll, I meant.
Yep.
Paper bags. So this is more egg carton.
And these are all browns. And so we want the other horse manure on top of that.
Yes, horse manure on that. You want to wet it first?
I just did.
Okay. And then some leaves. So you're getting the idea.
You want to talk about pine needles and acid and
Oh yeah. So
oak leaves and
here's something else that you can use. This is straw. This is rice and alfalfa. So I scrounge up alfalfa. That is brown. Alfalfa grass hay is nitrogen, green. Oak leaves. People ask all the time about oak leaves. You can use oak leaves? I thought it was high acid. No. When they're on the tree, they have more acid. When they fall, they're dead, and it composts to a neutral pH. So oak leaves are wonderful. Same thing with pine needles. They just take a long time to break down. So this is called pine straw. If you can chop them up into smaller pieces, it will break down faster. We said about the microbes and the area, the more surface area you have, the faster it'll break down. Here's some more egg cartons and eggshells to go in cartons. Now this may not break down. You can sift it out at the end. Let's throw it in.
so what I've got here is ground up eggshells. You think, why would you want to do that? A couple different reasons. Number one, eggshells would be considered a brown. There's no nitrogen benefit to this whatsoever. However, if you've got soils that are low in calcium, or if you're suffering in your garden from blossom end rot on your tomatoes, this might help you. Also, these piles are going to attract worms, and the eggshells, the particles, will help with the worm's digestive system. Much like you got sand and grit for chickens, the same principle for worms with the eggshells. So a little bit goes a long way.
So I'm going to throw the leaf mold in here now. And how about some plant material?
Sure.
Okay, we have another question.
Okay.
So this one says we bought a shredder I can't see the whole thing. We bought a shredder to decrease the size of the materials going into the compost. You don't shred materials first before putting it into the bins.
Well, this is chopped up. They didn't go through a shredder. It's just chopped up. We don't have a shredder out here in the.
Not yet.
Shredder or a chipper shredder. Chipper shredder, you can do limbs up to,
3 inches.
Oh, not mine. Mine's about 3/4 inch, or maybe it's 1.5 inches, but I don't put nearly that much in there.
So if your chipper is going to be giving you pieces like this, you do not want to incorporate something this big into your compost. It will take forever for this. I mean, if you put it in here, you might see it disappear in about 5 years. But if you're just talking leafy material, like what Cindy's playing with there.
So this is rhubarb. This is like iris leaves, iris stalks. Those can just get thrown in. They break down really fast.
Right.
But they were nice enough to chop the stalks up.
Right.
Oh, this is a beauty.
So we asked that the various garden chairs trim up their stuff, chop it up before they put it into our holding bins here, before we build a compost bin, because the smaller the materials, the quicker it breaks down, and it just makes the whole process go that much quicker. This time of year, we're seeing a lot of plants go to seed, and that's not good, because once the seeds get into the compost, unless your temperatures are getting up to a point where it's going to kill seeds, especially weed seeds, you might be seeing some of those little plants show up as volunteers the next spring. Some materials that you definitely don't ever want to put in your compost pile would include Bermuda grass, either in the, you're just having a ball over there, aren't you?
I'm on a roll.
The roots and the stalks all are means of propagating Bermuda grass, which is never good in a garden. What other things, Cindy, would you not want to?
Well, here's some more coffee grounds. Let's put that on top.
All right.
Here, Dave.
Okay.
So you're getting the idea, right?
Build a layer, fertilize a layer, water a layer. Don't drop the bucket. There we go.
So this is my identity. Social Security, driver's license, not getting stolen. Now this is batch composting, where you scrounge up, you have all your material. Ideally, you want to fill it to the top, and that's why we suggest having another one for your dump and run.
Your daily pitches.
Our instructor did that, so I always remember that.
So throw a little more moisture on here. Just
Yeah.
ready to cover it up.
So, are there any more questions? Perfect. And cardboard from your prezzies. You want to just wrap it up here with?
Yep.
Okay. So we're just going to put cardboard on top here, just protect it, keep it moist. And that's it.
The idea for this is keep some critters out, keep the moisture in, so that we're having to come out here and add water less frequently. So if we built this to the top and we come out here tomorrow morning, actually, we would notice temperatures in excess of 100 degrees, surprisingly. If just this little bit of material put in here, it reacts that quickly. Once that temperature starts to decrease, you may want to think about pulling the bin apart setting it to the side and turning everything over into the bin again. That's a means of turning it. If you're not that ambitious, I think it's a great way to work off your COVID frustrations personally, but if you're not that ambitious that you want to be doing all that turning, then you've got a poker stick or that auger bit.
Jeez.
Either one.
You see how that goes down? So it doesn't have to be a back-breaking thing to turn.
So this little rebar thing, if you stick it in the ground, move it around a bit, you're allowing more air to get into the compost heap, the compost pile.
Now, when this is full and you allow that the several weeks to break down, this is going to go down about
half. The volume of this is just going to drop over time. Especially as you turn it, you're going to be taking away some of those air pockets that have been in there.
Mm-hmm. I think that's all I can think of.
Any other questions,
Nope, I think that's
comments, concerns?
that. Lauren said thank you. That was great.
Okay,
Awesome.
thanks for joining us.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you for joining us at Sherwood Demonstration Garden. Keep on gardening.
Thank you.